3:00, and I'm calling this meeting to order. First, let me thank all of you for being here in the cold weather. We appreciate your coming. And at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Then moved by Mr. Freeman, second by Dr. Wolf. Is there a discussion? Hearing none, may I have a vote, please? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposers, please say no. The agenda has been approved. At this time, we will hear from Fiscal Support Services Committee. Ms. Kristen Hammond, chairperson.
Madam President,
Yes, sir.
I understand that Mr. Hester wanted to listen in on this work session.
He's on.
Yes, okay, thank you very much, just wanted to know.
Ms. Hammond?
Thank you, Madam President. Our agenda item is to discuss the board budget memo to the board as of December 19th. And to start that discussion, we will bring forth comments from our CFO, Mr. Eric Bush.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board President Johnson, board members, Superintendent Dr. Sims. First, I want to thank this board for the opportunity to discuss this important subject matter. I also want to thank Dr. Sims, our senior accountant, and our staff for working hard to discover this. I also want to thank our finance team for their continued dedication to this district. They work hard to manage the complexities of school district accounting, ensure accurate, timely financial reporting, and maintain strong internal controls that support transparency and accountability. I'm extremely proud of each one of them, the experience they bring every day, and the skill set they use to serve this district. For more than 2 decades, our district has demonstrated a commitment to fiscal responsibility, earning the Government's Financial Officers Association Excellence in Financial Reporting Award for 26 consecutive years, an honor only held by a small number of districts in Georgia. We fully own our budgeting responsibilities, including this discrepancy outlined in the memo we gave to the board in December. We take great care in developing our annual budget, understanding the importance of accuracy in guiding decisions. As with all school districts, our budget is a living document, and periodic amendments are a normal and transparent part of responsible fiscal management. We remain confident in our financial practices and stewardship of district resources, and processes and procedures will be adjusted to ensure these discrepancies are not a part of future budgets. Next, I want to just go through and highlight the memo that y'all received and go through item by item the discrepancies that we found. First off, and the largest discrepancy was the additional duties of transportation personnel in our district. Our transportation personnel serve in many roles, including field trips, supporting athletic events, and in addition to their daily duties of maintaining their buses and transporting the students to and from their homes. This year, the $2.435 million that is shown here was an omission in the extra duty pay, where we captured their normal pay, but we omitted pay from their additional duties, and we own that. There was also 4 unaccounted for positions: the Director of Partnerships, Projects, and Engagement, and 3 positions that are supporting our new Innovation Academy. That totaled $577,000. Next, we had additional duties to support athletic events, including campus police security. And items in this category include overtime for security. It includes custodial help for clean our stadiums. It includes some coaching supplements that were discovered that weren't budgeted, and that completes that category. It's mainly supporting athletic events in our district. And the last category was $2 million that the district has historically budgeted for attrition. And what attrition is the difference between retirees that are at a higher salary, they retire, and they're filled with usually less experienced, lower paid employees on the lower end of the pay scale. And that difference is tough to account for when we're developing the budget in March and we're not hiring those new hires until May, June, and July. We believe that through our efforts of increased salaries and benefits, that $2 million attrition calculation and reduction in salaries that we've done is no longer needed. So we wanted to go ahead and let the board know that we would like to pull that money back. So this combined discrepancy totaled $5.5 million. Next, I was going to go through the board questions that were submitted to us, if we can. And after that, we'll open the floor for discussion. There are several questions here that we'll go through. The first question is, and they're in order of the categories we just described. The first questions deal with transportation. And it deals with, it was noted that in the 25 to 26 budget, the budget went from $14.5 to $12.6 million. That was a $2,000 reduction in costs. The question is, why did that happen? And it's a fair question. The reason why it happened is what I said earlier about omitting those additional duties. It was an oversight. We found it through our normal processes, and we brought it to the board's attention to make them aware of it. It was also noted that in unaccounted for positions, as it relates to the Innovation Academy, how did these emissions occur, and what departments are responsible. That Innovation Academy was a new building last year. It was a new need where there was a communication, there must have been a communication gap between the HR and the need for those positions and the budgeting side when the budget was being developed. We have strengthened that communication where between HR and our budget and finance team, so this won't happen again. There's also a question about, it would be helpful to provide information about how staffing needs are determined, including number of employees. Does the department head and leaders or specific programs provide staffing requests? And how are the staffing requests handled in terms of approval and disapproval and modification? We always start our budget season off and our school allocations based on school enrollment. So we'll get an idea of the census of each school, when we feel like how many students are going to be enrolling at each school, and we'll start applying a formula of teacher ratios to that student, so we can come up with an allocation of how many teachers we need for each grade level. As far as directors and departments go, those needs are based on director recommendations. They're approved by our senior code. Next subject is over the area of athletic events, and we'll start with the first one on campus police and additional costs. What controls are in place to prevent spending in this area for the over budgeted amount? And we want to reiterate that these expenses were already slated to happen. They were regular operating expenses in the previous year that didn't get caught in this year's budget. That's why we're adding that. We're asking to add that. But they are essential to support and secure, clean our stadiums, and maintain our stadiums for the athletic events that we have each year. Next is a question about what department and individuals responsible for monitoring the spending, and why was spending not halted when it reached the budgetary limits. Again, that budgetary limit was not accurate, but I will go into who is ultimately responsible, and that's each director of each department is responsible for overtime. We have a hard policy on no overtime in most of our departments. Some departments it's unavoidable. We have a struggle keeping bus drivers, and they run multiple routes and work many hours in this district to support it because we can't find them. That's the same with our campus police officers. As you know, we always have vacancies in campus police, and the existing officers are working overtime to support these events. The next question is, was there was there authorization for spending beyond the budgetary limits? And again, that was addressed as a calculation. Next is an important question that we all need to consider is, if we understand correctly, we have a higher pay scale in the last couple of years, and which is encouraging our staff to stay longer. And when they stay longer, they rise up on the pay. And that's the good thing. We want mature, talented staff in place in our district, and we want to encourage younger staff to stay mature in our district as well, and that costs money. So taking away that calculation of $2 million for that attrition, we feel is a positive movement in the district because it's really supporting and encouraging retention. What rate did we use for that attrition? We historically used a 1% to 1.5% attrition rate, and that's a direct reduction in overall salaries, trying to account for that gap. Going forward, we're going to reassess that and see what's needed. The next question is, are you saying that the system underestimated how much the retention efforts would encourage more expensive employees to stay together? Yes, we did. And I think that's a natural part of growth in an organization as large as ours. I'm going to move to the next subject about GNETs, which is not specifically in this budget discrepancy memo, but it was in the budget amendment number 1 that we found earlier in the year, and it states that the current amount sought to cover additional expenses is $1.7 million. What essential services are included in this amount? Are they administration services and grants? And the answer to that is yes. 90% of our costs are salary and benefits. And that $1.7 million is not all GNETs. That's $1 million for GNETs and about $700,000 for our special ed program, where we had reduced funding in that IDEA grant that was covering some paraprofessionals. But yeah, our costs and benefits have risen. And we looked at the last 3 years of our GNETs program specifically, and the enrollment over there is between 207 and 205 for the last 3 years, which means that as our benefit costs has increased, especially for paraprofessionals who support a lot of those roles that we don't earn money for on QBE, our overall cost has risen in comparison to the revenue we're receiving. And as fiscal agent for GNETs, the district is obligated to cover those excess costs. Another thing we've done in the GNETs program is start to share costs with other districts. Other districts send students that need care and help too, and to our district, and there's a cost associated with that, just like an out-of-county tuition would be for a regular student. Moving on to the next question, reducing the total overall cost in one of our lines by, this is moving on to the budget amendment. You want me to go through this? Or did we want to also come?
Yes, number 12, the one in reference to reductions totaling $3.201 million. That's still being completed. That answers 4 comments. So we'll move to the next question.
And do we have less, the next question is, do we have less students in GNETs in 26 to 25? Has staffing changed between those fiscal years? We had a reduction of 14 students in 26. Since the beginning of the school year, we've reduced staff by 3, all 3 parapros, with a total salary benefit of $120,000. Next are some proposed budget amendment questions. When did the administration know about each of the budgeting problems that resulted in increased costs for the FY26 budget? The administration knew and finalized that information, and the board was notified that same day. We believe that that is the best and most transparent way to communicate. When we know it, we tell you, and we deliver that information as quickly as possible. You remember the list various steps that the finance and budget team will take to ensure the current budget discrepancies do not reoccur. Why were these controls and strategies not in place already? That's a great question. we are, they are in place. These controls and procedures are in place. But we are human, and we made an error. We found it, and we're here to correct it and to move forward. But yes, we have strong procedures in place. We're going to have even stronger procedures in place, and to bring you forward the most accurate budget we can in the coming months. I think that concludes our memo questions. Okay. We were also asked to provide 5-year histories of several accounts. Basically looking at the comparison of the overall budgets for transportation, our staff, and some other items. The first one was a 5-year history, which we have here, and it just shows that the transportation overall expenses have increased slightly as salaries increase, also as gas and maintenance and other required repair and maintenance expenses increase. But it does show clearly that the salary and benefit line dropped from $10.2 million to $8.7 million. In hindsight, it's 2020, but and that should have been jumping out at us. But we know, and we are going to do everything we can to ensure that every budget is compared to each 3 years moving forward, so these gaps don't happen. Was the transportation director involved in compiling this budget? And yes, each of our directors are involved in crafting their budgets. And they requesting new spend that they may need or reducing expenditures as needed. Not only are the directors of each department responsible, including transportation, but myself, our budget manager, and our finance committee reviews these as well, are part of the team as well. In compiling the budget were the department expenses delineated or lumped together in one item. Yes, I think the answer to that question is yes, because we're looking at overall transportation salaries in this question, and they are including the director, routers, administrator, mechanics, and drivers. So we can delineate them out, but we're looking at this as a whole. Is there a 5-year history and timeline of campus police security for athletic events? We did provide this number here, board members, and it includes our security account. There are some coaching supplements that I mentioned earlier that we would need to provide in addition to this to fill that gap. But the main viewpoint here, and this is the main part of expenses, our security staff, where you can see the budget increase from $230 to $527 and dropped to $131,000. And that was where the omission happened. Question number 5 on this one is that to have historical information about our GNETS program. And we provided a pretty comprehensive chart here that shows our state funding, the carryover amounts for each year, including our federal awards and our federal carryover, what those total amounts we can operate those funds from equal, and then our enrollment trends from 2018 to 2026. There's a lot of information here, but we welcome any questions you have.
And before those questions, thank you, CFO Bush. I do want to just remind everybody that in the memo, we outlined steps to ensure increased accuracy in the future, along with next steps for the district finance team, which includes those savings that were identified, resulting in the budget amendment that we will propose during today's board meeting. I think it's appropriate to close on an inquiry that was actually sent to the Georgia Department of Education by one of our news outlets. And the question from the media was, can you tell us if the Georgia DOE has been notified of this matter by Bibb County Schools or been asked to assist? And the DOE responded, and I quote, "This is not information the district is required to report to the Georgia DOE. With that said, based solely on the information shared publicly by the district, which is what we just covered, this reflects a local media budget reconciliation and proposed budget amendment identified through routine internal financial reviews. The district has disclosed the issue to its board, outlined corrective steps, and indicated that it expects to maintain a healthy fund balance following the amendment. It is a standard operating procedure for school districts to reevaluate planned budget and spending based on actual figures throughout the year. With that said, it was important for us to submit to you a detailed memo outlining, you've heard our CFO say it several times, discrepancies, omissions, errors that we own. And we also own the opportunity to correct this matter, which we've already started. And we look forward to a board meeting when we will present the budget amendment for your approval.
Are there any questions?
Thank you. The first question that I have is certainly my questions are not on this list. I don't know why my question.
These were budget memo questions. I got all the budget memo questions.
So you're gonna answer my question with the amendment that was given.
Every question I got from the board, I put on the budget memo questions.
But I've had questions that are not on here.
Okay, so these are specifically related to the budget memo.
So mine weren't specifically related to the
No,
budget
sir.
memo. So then they'll be answered in the other meeting.
Yes.
Now, so I noticed in here that's what I asked, it had been taken out of this, and the whole thing is really, very heart-wrenching and confusing to me. First of all, I reflect upon the December the 18th meeting when I specifically asked questions before you cut me off about, how are they making sure that things are going? And it was, this is, Wilson, Beverly, and the, athletic director, Mr. Groves, were up there. They called Eric Bush up there. And I asked over and over again, and he said, we go through this step by step by step. And what really gets me is when he was saying that, he knew that this existed. And you know, it raises the question in my mind, can we trust what you say? I think that's a very important question for all of us to consider. We were in there time and time again. We went over and over. We do this. We got people in place. We do this, do this. And then the next day we get this. And it had 5.5 million in there. Now, when we got the correction, we had 7.7. And now I'm looking at something with 8.8 in. So I'm wondering, what can we trust?
That's a good question. So if you recall, and to the board, December the 12th, I notified the entire board via email of the issue prior to December the 18th. And I also let you know
What
in
did
the
the email
email,
say? Because I didn't get a copy of it, but I understand it didn't say that.
it actually let the board know that there was a budget error that we identified, and we need time to work through it. And we will keep them updated in reference to our working through it. So at that time, we did not have solid numbers. We needed to take the time to get those solid numbers in place. Also, along the lines of preparing for a board meeting on December the 18th. So I notified the board, actually, everybody knew about the issue prior to that December the 18th time. And actually, yes, sir. And on December the 19th, actually, we spent the lion's share of that day checking, double checking, triple checking. So that if we put out a 4-page memo, it was accurate. As far as timeline is concerned, we needed that time to work through. And I tasked the finance team to make sure that we give accurate information once we finalize and identify what the issues are. And that is the time that was required. So December 18th, that night, that was not a time to bring up something that I already brought up to you. And then I let you know already that it would be followed with a memo that came on December the 19th. So that was the intent to the board. It's never the intent to hide it during the December 18th meeting. No, it was rather to finish what I'd already started communicating with you on December the 12th.
As far as I'm concerned, for Mr. Bush to stand there and go over and over, and I said, release the information already. He said, yes, I said, they did this, but you didn't follow. And so he kept on going with that, and then the next day we get that memo with that in it. That is really concerning to me. Because I'm wondering, you know, when a budget amendment is proposed, what can we believe? And looking at these documents, now we got 7.4 and not 8.8. You know, and this 8.8, it's really convoluted. I don't understand what it's saying. Because it's got some increase in it, and it got some of the stuff that was in the 7.4 in it. And so I think that we need a real good explanation as to what that is, and then we have pray that we can believe what we're saying. And I understand, and I certainly, you know, admire when you say that you're human and you make errors, and I can understand it. But this is a lot of errors. For you to go ahead and say, we got this in place, and this person does this, and this person does this, and this person, and then you got all these errors. You know, I'm wondering what was going on the first 6 months if you hadn't caught some of this until December. I mean, with December, we're 6 months into the budget, and you're just catching this. And there's a lot of other questions, but I know somebody else may have some questions. If they don't, I have some more. But this really is something that I said back in May. I went back and looked at my notes. It seems that there is some type of a transparency resistance going on with our numbers. Because if we can't get accurate information, and when I asked that question, said, you know, there was another way to say that rather than refute what I had asked and say we do this over and over again, so we know our numbers are right. We would come up with this and that. That's really, I don't know how everybody feel. I can speak to nobody. Me, I'm representing District 2, and I'm representing them. If they don't want me here, they'll get rid of me next time around. But right now, I'm their representative. And what I heard is that this doesn't make good sense for this to be like this. And then I want you to explain how we get to this 8.8 million from 7.4, from 5.5, and now we're at 8.8. And I don't know what this number represents.
Yes.
Just to be clear, the 8.8 million, those are the recommendations that actually represent funds that will return to the 2026 budget. And that we identified, and Dr. Fick was referring to page 4 in the budget memo. So that is actually money in the positive that we're referring to, and we outlined it item by item to describe what each one is.
It is also a part of what was in the 7.4.
Does anyone else have a question?
I really need some clarity on some of these things because I'm hearing things that don't quite fit. So, first, transportation. Are we saying we simply didn't budget adequately for what we would normally expect to happen? Okay. With regard to public with campus police, I heard a couple different things, that it costs more, or I've also heard, well, we didn't budget enough based on what we should have expected to spend. Which one is it?
We didn't budget enough on what we expected to expend.
All right. When it comes to the partnership position and the 3 innovation positions, we simply failed to budget for something that had been previously approved.
Yes, that partnership position that was already in place in the prior year. When we pulled the job, when we pulled the listing, that position was vacant at the time. We were in a search. So when our accounting team got that information, it was a one-person department. It was overseen. The other innovation academies were separate.
When you say you were going to pull back the 2.4 million, tell me what you mean by that. Did I hear you wrong?
Remind me where you were?
Was this the attrition?
Fees, it's $2,030,000.
Did you say you're pulling it back?
So we're reducing it because we feel like we're seeing that our actual salaries are over that attrition amount. And you can see it clearly when we detail it out on person by person's line. Because that's how we budget.
So how much additional salary are we having to pay because of the lack of attrition, for lack of a better word?
How much more?
Yes. Is it the 2.03 million?
I wouldn't say based on our salary schedule, it's 2 million.
But I mean, is that the amount of the budget amendment that we recommended last?
Yes, sir.
What was the actual attrition rate? Do you know that?
1.5.
No, I mean, not the one we applied one.
Actual attrition, I don't have that right.
I would have to find out.
What I can tell you is historically, and following years of historical budgeting and our personnel, is our prior CFOs have always used that 1 to 1.5 attrition rate across all salaries. So we weren't looking at specifically identified positions when we're talking about attrition. We're talking about the 1 to 200 teachers that naturally rehiring and trying to estimate that salary change.
But it seems at least the budgetary assumption was that our attempts to counter attrition would not have a significant budgetary impact.
That could be a good assumption. Yeah. These are estimates, and we're doing our best to estimate as appropriately as we can.
Listen, I'm not complaining about these policies being effective in retaining experienced teachers. Definitely need as many as we can have. So I'm not. It's just anyway. So I'm sorry, I'm a little bit scattered. There's obviously a lot of material.
Yes,
The GNET's money, the 1.7 million. 1 million was specifically for GNETs.
that's the estimate.
You said 700,000 for special education. Is that special education in general or special education only at GNETs?
Special education in the general. So GNETs is funded separately for higher need students, and it's not part of our QBE calculation as well. So that is special education categories 1 through 6 on the QBE schedule specifically. And they are supplemented by the IDEA grant, which was reduced in funds for positions set.
So does this additional 700,000 include, is it positions just at GNET? Is it positions GNET and in our non-GNET schools or positions in our schools?
These are non-GNET positions.
And the reason I'm asking, it was a little bit confusing. It may sound like the 1.7 was completely for GNETs. So again, I'm trying to get clarity so I can understand this as best I can. All right. The issues that we've had, which sounds more like issues of omission, is that something that our auditing firm will pick up and have as a finding? Do you have any sense about that?
Normally, no. Unless it's just obvious, I wouldn't think they would. Their job is to make sure we're reporting timely and accurate information regarding all the financial reporting pieces.
Well,
But they do analyze a lot of data, so I can't say that 100%.
Well, obviously, we had a rather protracted discussion at the last board meeting about controls that were in place as related to expenditures related to the athletic program. And they would cost at least $150K for each of the 3 vendors, but we have controls in place to make sure they didn't exceed the budget. And so I do express concern that I'm worried about those controls.
Well, I can address that.
Please.
The auditors do extensively audit our approval and control process. We run controls on every requisition. They sample it. They make sure that those controls are in place for all of our procurement. payment invoice processing, and make sure they match. So there's a three-way match in those systems, and they are auditing that process and have no findings. Period. The athletic budgets, I know Dr. Fickman and y'all have expressed concern about. In the last meeting, I wanted to make sure we all understand. In the last meeting, athletic equipment is spent out of basically gate receipts. That's not district money. That's fiduciary funds that we're responsible for managing. So there is not necessarily a budget on those items. But what I can assure you is that the controls and the vendors that the district uses are also the vendors that athletic fund has to use. They go through our exact same procurement and approval process. But what we do ensure is that there's not negative money in those accounts. So you have an athletic fund with, one school may have $100,000 as a budget that they're spreading over sports, and one may have be running low. When they put in their request for a $10,000 order, we're going to look at that account to see if there's money in it and say, hey, there's no funds available here. Let's readdress this issue, and you may have to lighten that order. So that's the budgeting control we were talking about.
But the reason I ask that is that in one of the responses to the issue with campus police, there's a line, while controls were in place, the need for coverage for the sake of safety was the only reason for additional funds needed. Which it sounds like, please correct me if I'm wrong here, that we needed this, it's a good thing, so we could spend more than was budgeted.
I think, if I remember correctly, we just determined that expenditure was expected from the previous year. So we knew that it cost X amount to run a game, and that we know that however many games we have are going to cost us much money. The budget line for that was omitted. But the controls in place, it's not like we're putting, unless it's a rival game, we're not sending masses of people out there that are in excess of what it takes to run that stadium.
And again, the reason I'm asking the question, I'm trying to clarify whether we're dealing with just simply an omission. We didn't put enough funds in there because we knew we'd spend it versus, we ended up spending more than we budgeted because we had something unanticipated.
Right. And I will let you know that too, I think it's important to note that we have our budgets separated by personnel budgeting and operational budgets. And our operational budgets are those things like supplies and maintenance, gasoline, fuel, those things that it takes to run a department. And in our operational side, the reason we know these are overages and salaries is because those operational budgets, they're on bar. They're not grossly over anywhere because we do have processes in those expenses. Our salary and benefits is the ones that we have budgets and estimates out there, but we looked at the schedules this year and said we're going to run over. We know campus police was under budget. It was an omission. We know transportation is under. Let's figure out why we did budget for this one piece. And that's where that's coming. But our operational side is well controlled within parameters.
I appreciate the information. Understand, it's not just me asking questions. I'm asking the
No, I
questions
respect
the public
everybody's
would ask,
question. I do.
because it is their money that's being entrusted to this system.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Thank you. That's all I got right now.
Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you. And Ms. Bush, thank you for your presentation. And very thorough with us, very well done. And I appreciate it. Wow. I was concerned about this, and I wish we could make those errors. But we did. So what I appreciate is that you and your staff reviewed what you had done and you found it. And when you found things, you shared it with someone. And then you shared it with him, you shared it with the group. And while we are beating a dead horse, all we can do is just accept what you're saying or not accept what you're saying. In my opinion, I think you've been very thorough with what happened. I understand mistakes happen. We are only human. as someone said, he who without mistake. And I don't believe anybody in here will be able to cast the first stone because we all make mistakes. And what I appreciate about you and your staff is when you found those errors, you brought it down to the right. And I appreciate the State Department saying that was nothing for them to see. It's part of mid-year assessment. So you did your mid-year assessment and you found your errors. I also appreciate your transparency. I appreciate in the past, we got a really good auditing report. They even went so far to say that you all went far beyond the call of duty to make sure your reports were accurate. So I believe you all gonna do it again. I believe you're gonna go far beyond the call of duty to make sure your reports are accurate. And again, I want to thank you for finding those mistakes and bringing it to our attention. That's all you can do. Thank you.
Dr. Pickett.
Thank you. And while I know that mistakes can happen, and I've already said that earlier, and I know that no one is perfect, but this is a lot of mistakes for people to be making who get paid every day to look at our budget and then come and present to us and say we go through this pattern and that's why this is what we do. Now, he brought up about the situation that I was questioning in the last meeting, and I went back to the June records and pulled that, and I understand now why they wouldn't give us a figure, because there is a document that we voted on that said that they would not spend more than $300,000 with BSN. And because they were specific to BSN, Rydell and whatever the other one was, Start Something, were not in there. So then they could go over with those because the document only identifies BSN. And I'm saying to myself, was this the kind of thing they were doing? Because all I was asking for is how much are you going to spend over the $150,000? And they would refuse to give an answer. But the answer was that they had already signed the document saying that BSN was going to be $300,000. So do you all remember? I know that the attorney, she chimed in, but she didn't have that read before her, but that was what that document said. And I remembered it and I pulled it. So I'm back to where I was, you can do all the glory reports that you want to do. And I know I probably was doing budgets before Eric was born. And I'm familiar with that. I'm familiar with what a auditor can do. They can only do what the people give them the audit. So all of that sounds good. But here we are with a pound mistake that, according to what you described to us, should have never happened. And it happened over and over again. And this is not in one place. This is in several different categories in this budget that you will identify to us in the December 19 memo. And one of the things that's very glaring to me about it is that we didn't get an itemized list of all those things, which I always ask for that. I ask that they give us an itemized list of the stuff that the superintendent had spent up to $50,000. They gave us a really, really long list without a summary to it. And I want to see a summary, and I am requesting that I see a summary to that list, because when you start spending and there are no controls in place, even though you said they were in place, and I said, well, y'all they were in place, but you just violated them. That was my comment at that time. You can go back and look at it several times. And I'm saying to myself, why is it that, we can't get an answer to certain questions when we ask them at the board? And this is growing to me because now the figures have changed. And as I looked at what was just given to us momentarily, some of the same numbers in here in the memorandum for the budget amendment, and of course, I don't know whether this document is saying, this is where the rest of the money is coming from, and this document was saying that's where it's coming from and where it had gone and what we need to replace. It's very confusing as to what these documents are saying to us.
So I can summarize it. This is the budget amendment for you. It's clearly, as I can, in this page right here, that has 3 columns. The reason those numbers are all together is because we presented a budget amendment number 1 in October. So what I wanted to do is in column 1 is our original budget. Column 2 is that first budget amendment that failed. So I wanted to clearly outline it here so we can add together these pieces. The middle column represents the changes since that budget in the emissions that we found. So those are isolated in that larger column. The last column, which includes some of those funds, was 2 grants we received from to support children in poverty and the mental health. And those have to be expended. So when we show those, we show them as full revenue for expense. But this was a progression that includes everything included. So in the budget memo, action memo, it should itemize every single item that's included in the original budget amendment, all the items we found in the discrepancy, and then including, we went ahead and included that grant award because we know we just need to account for it.
And that was my question, that I asked, and Susan said it'd be answered later on, but you brought it up just now. Is how can we take the money that was given to us in a grant and use it to cover this deficit?
We're not.
I know you're not, now you didn't put it in here after I asked the question, but it was in here originally. When you first showed us this document right here, it was in here, so you did not read it to you. It was in there, so I'm glad it's being taken out, because I could never vote for something that is taking money from children in poverty and children who are experiencing mental situations and use that to cover
we can't do that.
where we are. I knew you couldn't, and that's why I asked that question, and I'm glad you're taking it out. Now, the other thing is that as we go forward with trying to find out a way to do this right here, are these the only places that you can find some money in? I mean, because you got the Chrome notebooks there, and the Chrome notebooks, the whole $3 million come from the splash fund, splash fund, rather than this half of it, and that would free up that much money. And then I would also like to know the $5 million that was put into the budget that I objected to back when we were doing the budget for teachers for supply teachers, what we used to call it. And I asked about that because the previous year didn't come nowhere near $5 million. But $5 million was still put in there. And I'm saying, why are you putting that much money in there? And so now, is there any money? I want to know how much of that $5 million has been expended. If your projections were right, we should have about $2.5 million still in there if you spent $2.5 million for the first 6 months of school. But I don't think that happened.
We'll research that.
And I hope I get this answer back, because we have a lot of answers that we question that we ask and we never get answers back from.
We'll get you those.
And one other thing, I want to look in the athletic budget and why it's it over like it is. I mentioned very early on when we did not approve an assistant athletic director, that someone had said that the person who was, I guess, designated to be the assistant operator was going to get $20,000 anyway. I want to see in that budget, has that $20,000 been paid to that person?
Dr. Harry.
Are you finished?
I'm not finished with you.
No, go ahead. I'd rather leave it finished. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, really. I just have
Wait a minute,
Make sure.
I have a
only
very,
about 10 more minutes.
I have very short time, you know. I know that we, every now and then highlight where we have teachers that get, advanced degrees. I also know that your department does not know when somebody's going to get an advanced degree, do they? No. So whenever someone gets a raise from getting a master's degree, a specialist degree, a doctoral degree, that is something that you don't know when you're creating the budget. Is that correct?
That's right.
So every year, salaries are going to change. Teachers get step raises. You don't look at this one and then, oh, she's going to have a step raise. You have to look at that collectively. And I know that salaries alone are always questionable. And when we've done salary adjustments as well, that's added another hinge in the plan. So, and I know that our budgets are fluid. We normally have budget amendments throughout the year. So, you know, that was just one of the things I thought about is, you know, well, you never know when somebody's going to make a higher salary the next year.
We also, another thing that's important to note is changes happen in our open enrollment season in November, and that's when people can adopt new insurance or drop insurance. And in 10 policies, the pickup could be a $250,000 hit. Insurance is $22,600 per person. So, you know, sometimes we over budget, sometimes we're under budget in situations like that. But I will tell you too that we will have other budget adjustments this year. There will be other amendments as we receive new information. You know, they are moving forward. God willing, they're not any budget adjustments like this. They are because we are receiving the increased revenue from the state or a new grant or something like that. That's my intention with it. We will report accurately and honestly anything we do. That's our goal.
I'm well familiar with adjustments being made all during the year. But a good budgetary practice, based on what Dr. Boyd said, is that you put some money in there with the anticipation that people are going to get an advanced degree. You just don't have a solid budget in there and don't think that you're not going to do anything. That's just common, good budgetary practice, is to put some money in there for those kinds of things. You just don't have it just straight down the line. There's money always and should be in the budget for those kinds of adjustments.
Mr. Freeman.
I'll tell you, when I've reviewed the whole thing, we've done a few budget amendments, that's mentioned every year. The couple of things that stood out to me that raised real concern for me, the two under budgeted things where we knew there should have been expenses for transportation, we knew there should have been expenses for these overtime things that were previously budgeted and didn't. And I appreciate Morgan kind of clarifying, is this a new expenditure that just happened, or is this, we knew this was going to happen but forgot to put it in the budget? Okay. I'm happy to hear that you not only recognize it, but your solution is we're going to make sure we look at this line item for the past 3 years. And if these things kind of jump out when you look at it, it should jump out when we're doing the budget. So I'm looking for solutions, how to make sure we're not happy. So I'm happy to get that. The other has to do with the attrition rate. This is the first year we implemented the new salary. Right? So this was a new thing. The 3 positions at the Innovation Academy, this is the first year we've had those 3 positions. Is that right? That's correct. And the director of PBE, that was actually a vacant position, and the only person in that department at the time of the budget. Is that right? That's correct. So I can understand, not agree with it, but I can understand how we got it. More importantly, it looks like you tried to figure out how to make sure we're not in the same boat again. So I want the public to understand, a lot of it's been said, we've got a $5.5 million discrepancy. I've seen comments, oh my gosh, who took this $5.5 million? Where, you know, we're not going to be able to pay. I actually got asked by a reporter, are we going to be able to write checks at the end of the month? Yes. We have a healthy fund balance, as the Department of Education said. And in fact, the budget amendment puts more money in that fund balance because despite the $5.5 million being a glaring amount of cost, you come up with a glaring amount of revenue, to go back into the budget. Is that fair assessment?
The board voted on.
If we approve the budget amendment, yeah.
Well, part of it is something that's gonna happen already because of the millage rate, it was
Right.
adjusted, and this includes the anticipated tax revenue from that millage rate, to maintaining the millage rate last year.
Well, and when we voted on the budget last year, I know there were certain things like the Chromebooks that were in the budget. I made the comment at the meeting, if the voters approve this SLOSS, this ain't gonna have to come out of the general fund. It'll come from the SLOSS, right?
That's correct.
And so that's the kind of thing I expect to see. I'm glad to see this back in here. And honestly, if we, I imagine if we had passed the October budget, we would have had, some of these other things would have come up, but we got a whole lot in this one
We
budget
did, we
amendment. Is
did.
that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Dr. Woodward.
First of all, thank you for helping us to understand, what happened, with this discrepancy. So in that, December 19th memo, we talked about 5.5. So is it still 5.5?
The thing we found was 5.5, because we had already identified the GNETs and the special ed problem in October. We just didn't vote on it. Yeah, I mean, it was denied. So the 5.5 was the new information. It was never intended to say, here's the total. It was saying, hey, this is the first thing, this is the second. The reason the special ed and GNET came up is because we don't get those award letters. We're giving out contracts in March and April of each year, and we don't get federal award letters until July, August, September. And this year has even been further delayed sometimes. So we've already secured positions, and then the awards come back, and sometimes, like in the one of them was completely withdrawn. And unfortunately, those things happen, and they're beyond our control. But that's what happened in those programs. Is that those funds, our benefits that the state's mandating us to pay is outpacing what the state is giving us to support those children. And it's the local responsibility to fill that gap.
So if this board, votes for the amendment, for our amendment, then the money comes from the results.
So this just trues up what's basically gonna happen. So the tax revenue was already passed. It's just accounting for the anticipated revenue that we will get throughout the year. The salary and benefit adjustments, we're proposing that because those drivers are gonna drive those buses, and they're gonna get compensated just like they did the year before, and we need to make that budget appropriate for that expenditure.
So what happens if this board does not vote to approve?
Is that good? We're gonna turn the budget in all the categories.
Any questions? I just did have one additional question. On page 13, or number 13 of the original budget question was 1.257 million in other identified cost reductions. And it was stated that that would be provided later. And have those cost reductions been identified, and when we would get a copy of that?
If they're identified, we just want to make sure that we're clear and give you specificity as to where those identifications come from. We anticipate perhaps in the week, we get that to the board. And they've been identified.
Other questions?
A good example of that, can I find it?
Sure.
Is, if you look at that transportation history we gave you, if you look at the operations side of transportation, you're going to see 650,000 of unspent. We need the additional money for salaries and benefits to fill that gap. But in the previous years, we haven't spent the whole allocation. And through judgment and some other areas that we're looking at is, we can see that we can save about 1.275. So once we finalize that, we should be with this.
Madam Chair, I have been told there's almost 4 o'clock. I guess it is. Yeah, 1:09. Therefore, we will end this part of the presentation, and I can take it back to you, Madam President.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for all your discussion. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Is there another discussion? All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please adjourn, please say aye.